ARTEXPRESS is an exhibition of outstanding bodies of work from the previous year's HSC Visual Arts examination. In 2021, Hazelhurst Arts Centre is exhibiting 51 of these young artists' works, including 10 from Sutherland, Shire and the St George area schools. The criteria for the HSC Visual Arts examination is to show strong technical resolution and conceptual strength and meaning.
With the challenges that we faced in 2020, the works in ARTEXPRESS at Hazelhurst Arts Centre offers an introspective look at what students were thinking and feeling during this time. The works that we have are vibrant, powerful, and offer a unique perspective of our changing world.
In exhibiting ARTEXPRESS, we are aiming to connect with our community through visual arts and to show the high standard of these bodies of work.
So my work is focused on the life cycles of humans and the family. Each of my pieces are split into like 4 different age groups, representing different stages of human life, whether it be like toddlers, childhood, middle age, or elderly. My name's Ariel Berger. I was at Emanuel school and my body of work is called A Family Lunch in the Ceramic Medium. Even as we grow and our families change, new people coming in or elderly passing away, it's exploring that nature, that universal theme that all of us go through. And my own grandmother taught me a lot about ceramics early on in life, and being able to work at her garage, which is very fortunate considering the circumstances, especially through COVID. Definitely in the beginning of when I started making, particularly on the slip casting of the dome, I had like liquid clay kind of spill out all over my garden and it was a bit of a mess and all that. But I learned the technique and I retried and it came out how I wanted it to. So it's just kind of a lot of trial and error. So I really wanted my artwork to be something enjoyable to look at. I want it to be cheerful. I want the audience to be guessing what it is, what does it mean, in a playful manner. I think the colours are a key part of that, but also the abstract nature of the face. Like you can see the eyes, the nose, the mouth, but in an abstract way that makes it clear to the audience that this is like a person, but then take that back and then see it's in a bizarre nature. It's all over the place and I kind of want the audience to be guessing. I definitely got that kind of chaotic style, was influenced by Linda Draper, who was a big inspiration for my work, and that kind of like twisting pipe nature of a lot of her work was key to like the aesthetic I was going for essentially. A lot of my decisions, especially in the second half of the year as I'm just making at this point, kind of evolved, you know, what if I just do this and then I do it and I can't really change it, but like, you know, it's a spur of the moment thing and like, I think that's the way that art should be made rather than like meticulously planned out.
I wanted to explore this notion of urban loneliness. So in some senses, the square or rectangle in the photograph may represent the absence of a person in this urban environment. My name is Zoe Scoofus. I chose the medium photomedia, and my work is entitled Liminality. The places I photograph are often busy urban city places, so it's quite surreal to not be seeing anybody in these locations. The term liminality is derived from the Latin word limens, which means threshold. By that, I wanted to explore how the twilight period is a transitional period between day and night, where it seems surreal and there's a period of change. And also, I chose to include these squares as part of my work as a further extension of this liminality, because they are this fusion of physical and digital space presented in the photo. So with the different colours in my work, I feel that the presentation of the photography and the way it's collaged physically is very important. So it started off firstly by putting the coloured filters in primary colours, sort of reminiscent of the primary colours we see displayed in Distill artworks. And then from that it developed into wanting to insert these Distill inspired squares and rectangles and other shapes that represented this void of physical space. What really brought my attention to this style of photography was Gregory Crewdeson's work. He takes photos at the twilight period and tries to create photos that almost look like surreal paintings. An artist that really inspired me, even though he doesn't use the same medium as me, is Edward Hopper. His paintings capture this sense of urban loneliness. It shows that often city life or urban life can be very isolating in that everyone is focused on their own world. The isolation that we'll experience in 2020 really played a part in my work, not just literally in that often when I would go out to take pictures there would be less people around, but also because I wanted to convey this sense of isolation in these public spaces where they would usually be so busy.
Conceptually, my body of work is about connecting cinema and religion, seeing the world today of cinema as one that has almost replaced religion as society is becoming more secular. Hi, my name is Marcus Tran. My body of work is a collection of works titled The Art of Sitting Down and Forgetting About Yourself for 2 hours. So I chose to do 3 oil paintings, a classic religious kind of triptych, as well as a film work. We're drawn in by the big oil paintings. They're very large pieces, which kind of show how we're deifying these characters that we see on screen. And I decided to do them in oil painting because that mirrors the kind of high Renaissance Baroque period of art where there's this very religious quality to the art, particularly with the chiaroscuro lighting that you can see in the works of Caravaggio and Rembrandt and such. In a similar way, my video work mirrors this chiaroscuro lighting, but in the film form, it's dynamic. In the cinema, the lighting comes from the film flashing on my face, and that dynamic chiaroscuro lighting is this perfect physical metaphor of that transformative experience that's going on inside internally. And that's that very transcendental nature of cinema that I'm trying to portray. These films are all based on this very religious kind of motif. In each of these frames, characters are going through a tough time or going through a really religious experience, watching something or having a moment of deep reflection. So I wanted to choose recent films to show how much this religiosity is present in modern films. I was inspired by the work of this sociologist from the 19th century, this French sociologist Auguste Comte, and he saw that the world was becoming more secular and thought that for secular people there was still this religiosity, this kind of religious void that needed to be filled. For me, it was a very slow process. They're very large canvases, so it was really a labour of love. I was dealing with these characters for a third of a year each, more or less. It was a very tough time to stay with them for that long, so I often jumped between the 3 of them. In the same way, when I was filming the video, I was actually experiencing that kind of religiosity myself. So when I was filming in the chapel, I was waiting for that specific 10-minute gap in the morning where the beautiful light would come through in the chapel, and in the cinema when I was filming myself in a completely empty cinema. It was a very religious experience for me. and it was very moving, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
My work is a collection of charcoal drawings, about 12 of them, and it's about my spiritual and medical journey with my mother and about her sickness and how it affected not only me but my whole family throughout the last 9 years. Hi, my name's Yasmine Damcevski. My work is spiritual oncology and I'm from Kirrawee High School. My mum has been sick with cancer for about 8 years now, and it has been a really big part of my life, and I really wanted to express that through my artwork and especially through my drawing, because that's a really big part of my life as well. Out of the 12 drawings, I've gone for 4 medical, 4 religious and 4 small drawings to intertwine the story. I wanted to really picture some motifs that were very abundant in my story, such as the IV bag and my mum's hand while she was in hospital. I wanted to have a heavy focus on angels because they are something that looks over you and protects you, and my mum has always been someone who protects me and loves me and is like a guardian angel to me, so I wanted to represent that. And I also wanted to show the cross because it's an integral part of Christian religion, and our family is Orthodox, so I really wanted to bring that Orthodox religion into my artworks. I used a variety of charcoal, so it included charcoal powder, charcoal sticks, charcoal pencils. There was a lot of playing around because it's a very delicate material, a lot of blending, toning, texture. It was very hard to grasp in the beginning, but it turned out pretty well and I ended up loving it. So. The artist artist that inspired my work was Caravaggio and his use of chiaroscuro and his heavy angel motifs. Nick Vesey, who focused a lot on the dichotomy between black and white. Daniel Ryle, who was a charcoal artist, he has that very realistic style that I wanted to put into my works. And Michael Riley, who was a photographer, who had a very religious motif throughout all of his photography, including feathers, which I wanted to bring into my work as well. Creating this artwork was definitely cathartic for me. It was a way for me to kind of sit with my thoughts and my emotions and think through them as I was drawing and try to kind of work through that myself, as well as creating something that was not only confronting and therapeutic for me, but also my family as well, especially my mum.
In the course of making my work, I ventured into a lot of different mediums and explored as much as I could. Hello, I'm Will Thomas. I went to Newtown High School of the Performing Arts, and this is Tacklebox. Tacklebox explores a few ideas that all loosely relate around this idea of déference, which is a French word by a French theorist and philosopher, Jacques Derrida, which refers to the phenomena by which, in trying to name things, in providing symbols and a language to define something, in the act of defining something and searching for a truth there is inherently distancing from the truth. What that looks like in the work came for me as this idea of establishing a series of recurring motifs and images and symbols which throughout the work become kind of obfuscated. So you can see that in this image of like a kind of fishing as this meditative act. Every kind of aspect of the work is inherently a part of that language of symbols and motifs. And you can see perhaps in the various shapes of those fishing floats, mimicked again in the ceramics and in the found Banksia. And there's an inherent kind of connection and loose sense of kind of wholeness, but it's still disparate. It's not quite graspable. It's all a little bit obfuscated and just out of reach, like trying to remember a dream when you wake up. The use of fish in this work is probably the most concrete form of that idea. Throughout the process, I took a fish, I photographed it, I coated it in ink, I printed it, took those prints, photocopied them, then dried the fish, skinned the fish, took a print of that, then continued like repeatedly making these copies of copies of copies where the nature of the object changes, but the foundation of what it is remains the same. So there is a sense of connection, but they are, again, obfuscated. Its final form it took was in the eyes of the mask that I wear in the performance. So it's symbols that are dropped throughout and connect the work.
Coming from a Chinese heritage which has been deeply rooted with a history of Buddhism, I wanted to share in my work the ethereal and empyrean nature of Buddha and his passage to Nirvana. Hi, my name is Zhao. I go to Caringbah High School and this is my sculpture Nirvana. I began with a reference picture which I drew up in Photoshop. From then I separated the colours into 8 different layers, 8 obviously being a lucky number in many Asian countries. And to further the meaning, I decided to add the 8 uniting values in order to reach Nirvana, the words being union, compassion, kindness, generosity, patience, truth, righteousness, and wisdom. Each of those words are repeated throughout the panels and in the languages of the countries with the highest rates of Buddhism: English, Chinese, Khmer, Thai, Lao, Mongolian, Korean, Malay, Japanese, Vietnamese, Nepali, and Hindi. After looking for inspiration with artists, I got led to the works of Michael Murphy, Shelley Garcia, Arden Osmanoglu, and Carol Cohen. They all shared aspects of illusion and perspective, which I thought was extremely fascinating and something I definitely wanted to add in my own body of work. When I began, I knew I definitely wanted to do something about Buddha because I had an innate spiritual connection within me and it really resonated with me. I was pretty familiar with acrylic already, seeing I used it in the Year 11 art, and I did design and tech as well. Initially, the acrylic pieces were to sit on a wooden block that had grooves cut out. But since the Buddha himself sat under a tree when he gained enlightenment, I thought I would use that to take my work to the next level and include an actual tree trunk. Big thanks to one of my teachers who recently just cut down a tree, so brought it into school for me and helped me cut it to size. The lighting that I decided to incorporate throughout my piece, I believe that not only individualizes every piece as its own, but also metaphorically symbolizes the Buddha as the sun in which all the planets revolve around.
Art to me is very important. My concept being mental health, I struggle with it and it's my outlet. I'm Charlotte Baker. My work is called Phonophobia and it is a collection of works. All of them are self-portraits. The technique behind the blurred self-portraits, I used a very low shutter speed. And then the 2 large photos in the middle, they are both 2 separate photos that I overlaid in Photoshop. The horizontal spliced photos, I took those in the shower and I then cut up replicas of the same photos and stuck them on top. The splicing effect that I used, I wanted to create distortion and kind of like a monster effect. Like it's not normal. It again goes back to mental health and the idea of monsters in your head. I chose to do black and white because of the darkness. It just made sense to me to have the contrasted white and black. 2020 affected my artwork in the sense that the feeling of isolation that you can see in my artwork was very pronounced because I was feeling isolated in lockdown. The mental aspect was difficult because my body of work, it's so close to me, and to express that myself like that, I felt vulnerable. And to be able to put that on to paper, it was both good and difficult.
The concept pretty much came from when I was just taking a few selfies, and then I thought, oh, this would be really cool to turn into a series of portraiture. I was getting really interested in Photoshop and digital media, so I used those sort of tools and technology to manipulate the photos into this sort of twisted, dark photography, and then from there used my previous drawing experience to create a series of portraits. Hello, my name is Blake Douglas. I went to Bulli High School and my work is called The Thespian. I decided to make it about, the emotional dichotomy of the LGBTQIA+ community, and part of that was kind of representing the pain and turmoil that comes with discrimination, opposed to the familial nature of drag, theatricality, that sort of inclusivity that performance art can bring, and I guess all art can bring. I was predominantly inspired by the works of Francis Bacon and his distorted portraiture, as well as Leon Basque's theatrical costume designs. The materials I used in my body of work were graphite pencils and Prismacolor pencils. So the Prismacolors were really helpful in creating these sort of over-the-top, larger-than-life theatrical figures. So an obstacle I faced was making sure that I got all the figures correctly positioned. It's a very long panel to draw on, and with that comes a lot of figures and a lot of spacing issues, because that was really important for me, getting that full rainbow, because that's, I guess, the symbolism within the work. I also love doing realistic style drawings, encapsulating something that's really true and authentic, but also has lots of personality and creativity behind it as well. I decided to explore, I guess, feelings of isolation, discrimination, that sort of panic, that rage, that sort of loneliness, especially with homophobic discrimination. I've really used the portraiture to encapsulate an emotional roller coaster, really, of the feelings you go through from an attack or just from a really hateful comment. So juxtaposing this sense of emotional turmoil, the panel of figures below create this sense of family and inclusivity. They really emphasize that if we just band together and, I guess, just accept ourselves, express ourselves, just the freedom of creative expression, then that's how, I guess, we can fight the hate and, all be happier people.
The idea for my body of work came about from my interest in architecture. I explored three main concepts: curvilinear forms, geometric shapes, and dynamic forms. My name is Ariel Crispino. I'm from John Terry Catholic College, and my work is called Meta Utopia, between process and poetry. The original plan was an art gallery, and that was meant to be put in Wollongong. That was the location where I was designing it. It's in front of the Wollongong Lighthouse. Beneath the work there's a topographic map. I started with circles, squares, rectangles, and then eventually I ended up with a crescent design. The first software that I was using was SketchUp, and then I did use little bits and pieces from other architecture programs. So this was the first time I used the software, and we didn't really have any main IT people at our school who knew how to use the software properly. So it was just me kind of just playing around with it, teaching myself it for the most part. My work consists of 2 digital drawings, a series of black and white photographs, the model itself, and a book. The materials I used mainly revolved around 3D printing, so that consisted of PLA plastics, and then I have used Ariel dyed glue to join that to the perspex base, foam core for the base, and then just the images. From reaching out to architects, I developed a kind of bond with one main person who kind of mentored me throughout the whole project. I had 3 main architects which inspired my work: Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid, and Santiago Calatrava. Hadid was really successful in curvilinear forms. Gehry was successful in his deconstructivist designs, and Calatrava is known for his just insane designs, very out there. The thoughts and feelings explored in my work mainly revolved around just purity. So this was mainly brought about through the white colour. So that was just symbolic of cleanliness and serenity. I was mainly inspired by Zaha Hadid, so her works kind of revolve around that, and I like that.
The 2020 bushfires obviously occurred last year, and it was a really overwhelming time for everyone. My name's Bronte Stark, and I went to De La Salle Catholic College, Cronulla, and my body of work is high vis. The story behind my work was really heavily influenced by an article in the Women's Weekly. It was about 4 female firefighters. I chose 3. And they're not only firefighters, they were mothers and nurses, so I was really inspired. And also I was so grateful that the bushfires didn't affect me or my family, so I really wanted to pay respect to them and create a homage piece. Also, having the 3 female firefighters created the concept of feminism. People think they're back making tea and cookies when they're actually in the front line fighting besides the men. The materials that I first started using was acrylic paint, and I used that as the base just so I could get the colours right and all the different shades. Then after that I used a range of oil paints and palette knives, and I put on thick layers just to create that 3D effect and really intrigue the audience with all the different layers and coats. I also used my finger to blend in the colours just so there wasn't such harsh lines, especially on the fold of the clothes. I was inspired by Ando as I loved watching his show Ando's Brushwork with Fame, and I loved how he used palette knives and just put on the paint so spontaneously, but also was able to capture that emotion and really the personality behind the individual. A main obstacle was obviously COVID and not being able to go to school. Because my artwork is so large, I couldn't take it home. But I really pushed myself. My teacher helped me a lot and I was able to get it done in time. My advice for other students doing their body of work would be to choose a topic that they're really passionate about, because it makes it 100 times more easier to do. If you're passionate about it and you enjoy doing it, you won't want to stop doing it.